when I was a child, every day somebody asked me to sing. And at that time it was boring for me because I preferred to stay with my friends outside. And probably step by step I thought, okay, it was it's my destiny. Probably I have to sing in my life, I think.
The world knows Andrea Bocelli as a voice that has inspired millions. But behind the music, his life has also carried moments of deep emotion and unexpected challenges. Now, heartbreaking news surrounding the legendary Italian singer has left fans around the world searching for answers. From his remarkable journey to the personal struggles that shaped him, this story looks at the latest developments and the emotional impact they have created. Join us in this video as we uncover what happened and why so many people are talking about Andrea Bocelli today. The moments that tested Andrea Bocelli's silence. In late 2016, Andrea Bocelli found himself caught in a storm he never expected. After Donald Trump won the presidential election, the newly formed inaugural committee struggled to attract major performers. Then rumors began spreading that Bocelli had accepted an invitation to perform. Almost immediately, social media exploded with criticism, and many people called for a boycott of the legendary tenor. The situation was complicated because Bocelli and Trump had known each other for years. Bocelli had performed at some of Trump's private events, and from his perspective, accepting an invitation would have been an act of personal respect towards someone he knew. It was not meant to be a political statement or an endorsement of any candidate. But as the pressure increased, Bocelli made a surprising choice. He stayed quiet. There was no public argument, no angry response, and no attempt to defend himself against every accusation. He simply stepped away from the noise. For a man who had spent decades standing on the world's biggest stages, this became one of his first major battles outside music. A moment where the court of public opinion demanded an answer. But how does someone protect their dignity when the world expects them to choose a side? A few years later, Bocelli faced another difficult moment when fellow opera legend Placido Domingo became the center of controversy after facing allegations of sexual misconduct. Many in the American opera community quickly distanced themselves from Domingo. Bocelli did not excuse harmful actions or defend wrongdoing, but he questioned whether decades of artistic achievement should be completely erased before a legal judgment had been made. He understood that speaking about fairness would bring criticism, but he still chose to talk about the importance of allowing facts and due process to matter. Two controversies, two public storms. Yet Bocelli handled both in a way that reflected his personality. He did not attack his critics, chase approval, or portray himself as a victim. When the noise became overwhelming, he stepped back. When he felt something needed to be said, he spoke with calmness and respect. Throughout his career, Andrea Bocelli has carefully protected his image and carried himself with remarkable control. However, beyond the bright lights, behind the walls of Villa Alpamare, and away from the applause of millions, there is another side of the man the world rarely sees. But before fame, what struggles shaped Andrea Bocelli's extraordinary journey? Keep watching to find out. The childhood struggles that created a legendary voice. Long before Andrea Bocelli became one of the most recognized voices in the world, his story began in a small village surrounded by the hills of Tuscany, Italy. Born on September 22, 1958, to Alessandro and Eddie Bocelli, Andrea entered the world facing challenges that would shape the rest of his life. From birth, his eyesight was affected by congenital glaucoma, a condition that made seeing difficult from his earliest days. His mother, Eddie, refused to accept the advice of doctors who suggested ending the pregnancy because of the possibility that her child could be born with a disability. Instead, she chose to give Andrea a chance at life. Years later, Bocelli would often speak about that decision and how deeply it influenced his beliefs and his view of the value of every human life. Andrea grew up on his family's farm in La Sterza, a quiet village near Lajatico in Tuscany. His family earned a living by selling farm equipment and producing wine. Life there was simple, but it was filled with love, family, and music. Alongside his younger brother Alberto, Andrea spent his childhood surrounded by the sounds of rural Italy. From a very young age, music became more than just a hobby. It became his escape, his comfort, and eventually his future. His mother once said that music was the one thing that could always calm him. At only 6 years old, Andrea began taking piano lessons, and his curiosity quickly expanded beyond one instrument. Over time, he learned to play the flute, saxophone, trumpet, trombone, guitar, and drums. A major influence came from his nanny, Oriana, who gave him his first record by legendary tenor Franco Corelli. That moment sparked something inside him. Andrea became fascinated by the power of the human voice and began dreaming of becoming a tenor himself. By the age of 7, he could recognize famous singers and tried to imitate their voices, studying the techniques of the great performers he admired. But his childhood journey was marked by a heartbreaking moment that changed everything. At age 12, while playing football, Andrea was struck in the eye. The accident caused him to lose the remaining vision he had. Doctors tried every possible method to save his sight, even using treatments involving leeches, but nothing worked. From that day forward, Andrea Bocelli lived completely blind. Yet blindness did not silence him. Instead, music became the way he connected with the world. He continued singing throughout his childhood and eventually performed his first concert in a small village near his hometown. At only 14 years old, he won his first singing competition with the timeless Italian song O Sole Mio, proving that his voice carried a rare gift. After finishing secondary school in 1980, Bocelli studied law at the University of Pisa. To support himself during his studies, he performed in piano bars during the evenings. It was in those places that he developed his confidence as a performer and met many people who would influence his future. In 1987, while performing, he met his future wife, Enrica. Although he eventually completed law school and worked briefly as a court-appointed lawyer, music continued calling him back. His life changed forever in 1992 when Italian singer Zucchero searched for a tenor to record a demo of his song Miserere. After hearing Bocelli's voice, Luciano Pavarotti himself encouraged Zucchero to choose Andrea instead. That opportunity opened a door that would transform his life. Bocelli's recording helped introduce his voice to a wider audience, and soon he began performing across Europe. After being discovered by Caterina Caselli, he signed with Sugar Music and began his professional journey as a recording artist. In 1994, Bocelli entered the Sanremo Music Festival with Il Mare Calmo della Sera and won the newcomers category with a record-breaking score. His debut album quickly became a success, earning platinum status within weeks. That same year, he made his opera debut as Macduff in Verdi's Macbeth and performed before Pope John Paul II at St. Peter's Basilica. Then came the song that changed everything. In 1995, Bocelli released Con te partirò, a powerful ballad that would later become known around the world. When he recorded the English version, Time to Say Goodbye, with Sarah Brightman, the song became a global sensation, breaking sales records and turning Bocelli into an international icon. Behind the fame, however, was a story of determination. A boy who lost his sight, a young man who questioned his path, and an artist who refused to let limitations define him had finally found his place on the world stage. But as Andrea Bocelli's fame grew, so did the challenges that came with living under the spotlight. The world admired his voice, but few understood the personal battles happening behind the scenes. From childhood battles to worldwide fame, how did Bocelli rise? Stay tuned to find out. The rise of a global icon and the price of fame. By the late 1990s, Andrea Bocelli was no longer just a talented singer from Tuscany. He had become a voice recognized around the world. But behind the success, awards, and international applause was a man who had spent his entire life overcoming obstacles that once seemed impossible. In 1998, Bocelli reached another major milestone when he stepped into one of opera's most demanding roles. He portrayed Rodolfo in Puccini's La Bohème at the Teatro Comunale in Cagliari. For an artist who had once been told that his blindness could limit his future, standing on an opera stage performing one of the world's most famous characters represented a powerful victory. That same year, his album Aria, the opera album, was released, bringing his classical voice to an even wider audience. Soon after, Bocelli made his American debut with a concert at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts in Washington, D.C. The performance opened a new chapter in his career, introducing his voice to millions of listeners across the United States. The following day, he was welcomed at the White House by then-President Bill Clinton, a moment that showed how quickly Bocelli had moved from a rising European artist to an international figure. His talent was no longer limited to opera halls. He had become a symbol of passion, perseverance, and the power of music. In 1998, Bocelli's achievements continued to grow. He won 2 World Music Awards, including Best Italian Singer and Best Classical Interpretation. He was also named among People magazine's 50 Most Beautiful People, a recognition that showed his appeal had reached beyond the world of classical music. But perhaps one of the most memorable moments of this period came when he joined Celine Dion for the song The Prayer. Their powerful duet became a worldwide success, earning a Golden Globe Award for Best Original Song and receiving an Academy Award nomination. When Bocelli and Dion performed together at major award ceremonies, millions witnessed the emotional connection between 2 extraordinary voices. As his popularity expanded, Bocelli performed across North and South America, Europe, and Asia. He sang for world leaders, appeared at major charity events, and performed in some of the most prestigious venues around the globe. Yet even with all the attention, he remained focused on the one thing that had always guided him: the music. In 1999, Bocelli released Sacred Arias, an album dedicated entirely to religious music. The project became another historic achievement, reaching #1 on the U.S. classical charts and making him the first vocalist to hold the top 3 positions on the chart with multiple albums. The success proved that his voice could connect with audiences far beyond traditional opera fans. But fame also brought new responsibilities. Every performance carried expectations. Every public appearance placed him under greater attention. The world admired the voice, but it also began watching the person behind it. In 2000, Bocelli faced a deeply personal loss when his father passed away. During his famous Statue of Liberty concert in New York, he dedicated his performance to him, turning a global event into an intimate tribute. Standing beneath one of America's greatest symbols, Bocelli sang not only for the audience, but for the man who had supported him from the beginning. Over the following years, his career continued reaching new heights. He released successful albums, performed across continents, received countless awards, and became known as one of the greatest voices of his generation. From royal events to Olympic ceremonies, from opera houses to massive stadiums, Andrea Bocelli's voice traveled further than anyone could have imagined. But behind every standing ovation was a reality few people saw. The higher he climbed, the more difficult it became to separate the artist from the man. The world knew Andrea Bocelli, the superstar, but it knew far less about Andrea Bocelli, the husband, the father, and the person carrying the weight of a lifetime in the spotlight. And as the years passed, another question began to emerge. What happens when a voice that has brought comfort to millions faces struggles of its own? And behind the fame and applause, what battles did Bocelli face? Let's find out. A voice that united the world, but carried private battles. By 2010, Andrea Bocelli had reached a level of success few artists ever experience. His voice had crossed borders, languages, and cultures. He was no longer only an opera singer admired by classical music lovers. He had become a global symbol of hope, emotion, and perseverance. At the 52nd Grammy Awards in January 2010, Bocelli once again used his voice for something bigger than music. Standing alongside Mary J. Blige and producer David Foster, he performed Bridge Over Troubled Water, as a tribute to the victims of the devastating earthquake that struck Haiti that year. The performance carried a powerful message that music could bring comfort during moments of unimaginable pain. Only weeks later, Bocelli received one of Hollywood's greatest honors. He was awarded a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame for his contribution to live theater. The recognition marked another milestone in a career filled with historic achievements. A day earlier, a documentary about his life and journey, The Story Behind the Voice, was presented at the LA Italia Film, Fashion and Art Fest, allowing audiences to see beyond the performances and discover the man behind the legendary voice. But even with all the awards and attention, Bocelli remained someone who valued privacy and simplicity. During an appearance on Norwegian television's Skavlan, he gave one of his rare interviews and spoke about his upcoming Scandinavian tour. Rather than focusing only on fame and success, he shared his passion for music and performed Voglio vivere così alongside the Norwegian boys' choir Sølvguttene. Soon after, Bocelli continued his journey around the world. He performed across Scandinavia, Asia, and Europe, bringing his powerful voice to audiences who had waited years to see him live. In China, he sang Nessun Dorma during the opening ceremony of Expo 2010 in Shanghai, followed by a major concert at Shanghai Stadium. His Asian tour became another reminder of his extraordinary global influence. From Japan and South Korea to Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Singapore, thousands gathered to experience the emotion behind his voice. In Singapore, more than 12,000 people attended his free outdoor concert, proving that Bocelli's music had the ability to connect with people regardless of language or background. During this period, Bocelli continued collecting honors. At the 2010 World Music Awards, he received another award for Best Classical Artist, adding to a long list of achievements that recognized his impact on music around the world. Yet Bocelli's career was never only about awards or sold-out concerts. He repeatedly used his platform to support important causes. He performed at charity events, raised money for cancer research, helped earthquake victims, and appeared at humanitarian concerts. Whether singing in front of presidents, royalty, or ordinary families, his mission remained the same: to use his voice to create moments of connection. One of the most meaningful events of this era was the annual Teatro del Silenzio concert in his hometown of Lajatico, Italy. The event transformed the quiet Tuscan landscape into a stage where Bocelli welcomed famous artists and celebrated the beauty of music in the place where his journey began. Later that year, he performed at some of the world's most famous locations, including the ancient Odeon of Herodes Atticus in Athens and the area near the pyramids and Great Sphinx of Giza in Egypt. Each performance added another chapter to a career that seemed almost impossible to repeat. By the end of 2010, Bocelli's Christmas tour brought him to some of the biggest arenas in the world, including London's O2 Arena, where his sold-out performance became one of the venue's most attended shows. He continued across North America, performing in legendary locations such as Madison Square Garden and the Staples Center. From massive stadiums to intimate charity events, Andrea Bocelli had become a voice that represented more than entertainment. Millions saw him as a symbol of strength, a man who overcame blindness and transformed his struggles into inspiration. But while the world celebrated the singer on stage, a different story was unfolding away from the spotlight. Behind the powerful performances and endless applause was a man facing the challenges of family, personal loss, and the pressure of carrying an image that millions had come to admire. Behind the world's favorite voice, what personal stories remained hidden? Keep watching to find out. The love stories, family moments, and losses behind the voice. Behind Andrea Bocelli's legendary career is a deeply personal story filled with love, family, heartbreak, and moments that shaped the man beyond the stage. While millions around the world know his voice, fewer people know the private journey that unfolded away from the spotlight. In 1992, The same year, Luciano Pavarotti discovered the young tenor's extraordinary talent. Andrea Bocelli married Enrica Cenzati. At that time, he was not yet the global superstar the world knows today. He was a law student who spent his evenings performing in piano bars, chasing a dream that still felt uncertain. Their wedding was private and simple. There were no headlines, no cameras, and no worldwide attention. They were simply two people beginning a life together. 3 years later, their family grew with the birth of their first son, Amos. 2 years after that, they welcomed their second son, Matteo. For a period of time, Bocelli lived a quiet family life in Tuscany, far away from the pressures of international fame. But in 2002, after a decade of marriage, Andrea and Enrica separated. The reason behind the divorce has never been publicly explained. Even after so many years, the family has chosen not to reveal private details about the relationship. Bocelli, Enrica, and the woman who would later become his second wife, Veronica Berti, have all maintained a respectful silence. Perhaps that silence was not about hiding the truth. Perhaps it was about protecting the people involved. Some chapters of life are too personal to be turned into public stories, especially when they involve family and emotions that cannot easily be explained. That same year, Bocelli met Veronica in Tuscany on a rainy night that would change both of their lives forever. She was only 18 years old and had not even planned to attend the gathering where they met. During the evening, she walked into a room with a piano and began singing quietly to herself. Bocelli happened to pass by and heard her voice. He could not see her face, but he heard something that immediately caught his attention. The man whose world had always been shaped by sound connected with her through music before anything else. He later described their first meeting as something almost impossible to explain, a connection created through a voice. They spent the night talking, and their relationship began soon after. Although there was a 25-year age difference between them, Bocelli never viewed it as something that defined their relationship. He explained that age differences had existed in his own family and that love was not always measured by numbers. For more than a decade, they built a life together before officially marrying in March 2014 at the Sanctuary of Montenero in Livorno, Italy. The wedding was especially meaningful because it happened on the second birthday of their daughter, Virginia, who was born in 2012. For Bocelli, becoming a father to Virginia created one of the most emotional experiences of his life. When she was placed in his arms after birth, he could not see her face like other fathers could. Instead, he used his hands to discover her features, gently feeling her nose, cheeks, and lips. That was how he first met his daughter. Later, he spoke about her voice and described it as something beautiful and almost angelic. For Andrea Bocelli, music has always been his connection to the world. But there is also a quiet sadness behind that gift. No matter how many people hear his voice or how much success he achieves, he will never experience the simple moment of looking into his children's eyes. Yet his children gave him something that fame never could. His oldest son, Amos, was born with perfect vision and could have followed any path he wanted. Instead, he chose music. He became a pianist and began performing alongside his father, creating moments that showed the deep bond between them. Then, in 2018, Matteo joined Andrea for the emotional duet Fall on Me. Standing together under the bright lights, father and son created a moment that touched millions. Bocelli could not see Matteo's expression, but their voices told a story of love, pride, and connection. The performance showed the world that some bonds do not need words or sight to be understood. Away from the stage, the Bocelli family built their home at Via Alpamare, a beautiful pink villa on the Tuscan coast that Andrea purchased in the late 1990s. Once an old hotel, he transformed it into a place filled with family memories, music, and creativity. Veronica became much more than his wife. She became his partner in every sense of the word, managing his career, working as vice president of the Andrea Bocelli Foundation, and helping produce projects connected to his artistic life. In 2023, The couple shared another side of their relationship through The Journey, a film that followed them traveling across Italy on horseback. The idea was born during the isolation of the COVID pandemic, when Bocelli longed for freedom, nature, and movement. For a man who cannot see the world around him, Villa Alpimare became more than a home. It became a place where love, family, and music could exist together. But even with all the happiness he found, Bocelli never forgot the person who helped change his destiny. In September 2007, he faced one of the most emotional nights of his life, the farewell to Luciano Pavarotti. And what Andrea Bocelli did during that funeral would become one of the most unforgettable moments of his career. After love and loss, why did Bocelli's voice divide the world? Let's find out. The voice that divided critics and captivated millions. Andrea Bocelli's voice has reached millions of people around the world. His concerts sell out. His albums have achieved incredible success, and his fans often describe his performances as deeply emotional and unforgettable. But behind the admiration is another side of his career, a debate that has followed him for decades. While many listeners consider Bocelli's voice one of the most beautiful in modern music, some classical critics have questioned his technical ability as an opera singer. His career has existed between two worlds, the emotional connection of popular music and the strict expectations of traditional opera. From the beginning, however, Bocelli received support from respected figures in the music world. One of his earliest mentors was Italian tenor Franco Corelli, one of the greatest opera singers of his generation. After hearing Bocelli perform during a masterclass in Turin in 1986, Corelli recognized something special in his voice and later became his private teacher. For many artists, having a legend like Corelli believe in them would have been the ultimate confirmation. But Bocelli's journey was never only about technical perfection. It was about the feeling he created when he sang. Puerto Rican soprano Ana Maria Martinez, who has performed with Bocelli many times, described his greatest strength as something difficult to explain. She said that Bocelli brings a unique light and a purity that reaches listeners in a way words cannot fully capture. Other famous artists have expressed similar admiration. During her 1998 Christmas television special, Celine Dion famously introduced Bocelli by saying that if God had a singing voice, it would sound like Andrea Bocelli. Producer David Foster, who worked closely with him, has also praised the emotional beauty of his voice. Jazz singer Al Jarreau, actress Elizabeth Taylor, and television host Oprah Winfrey have all spoken about the powerful effect Bocelli's performances had on them. Oprah once explained that hearing him sing moved her to tears, while Taylor described his voice as something that touched her mind and soul. His supporters have included famous personalities, royalty, and millions of everyday listeners. Prince Albert II of Monaco invited him to perform at his wedding, while figures such as Sarah, Duchess of York, and actress Isabella Rossellini have also shown admiration for his work. But not everyone in the classical world shares the same opinion. Some opera critics have argued that Bocelli's voice lacks the technical control expected from a traditional opera tenor. They have criticized his breath support, vocal strength, phrasing, and ability to handle difficult operatic roles. Critics from major publications, including the New York Times and The Guardian, have questioned whether his popularity matches his classical technique. One major criticism has been that Bocelli's voice is better suited to emotional ballads than demanding opera performances. Some reviewers have argued that while his tone can be beautiful, his technique does not always meet the standards expected in professional opera. Other critics have pointed to issues with vocal projection and control, suggesting that studio recordings and amplification sometimes make his voice appear stronger than it sounds in a traditional opera setting. These criticisms have followed Bocelli throughout his career, especially when he performs famous roles from the classical repertoire. Some reviewers believe that opera requires more than emotion. It requires complete technical mastery, and they argue that Bocelli does not always reach that level. Yet his millions of fans see the situation differently. For them, Bocelli's greatness does not come only from perfect technique. It comes from the emotion behind every note. They hear the struggles of a man who lost his sight, overcame impossible challenges, and turned his voice into a source of hope for people around the world. Perhaps that is why Andrea Bocelli remains such a unique figure in music. He is loved by millions, questioned by some experts, and impossible to ignore. His voice may continue to divide critics, but the emotional connection he creates with audiences has made him one of the most successful singers of his time. And behind all the debates about technique and talent remains a deeper question. Is a singer remembered only for perfection, or for the way they make people feel? For Andrea Bocelli, history may ultimately be decided not by critics, but by the millions who found comfort in his voice. So, what are your thoughts about Andrea Bocelli and his heartbreaking story? Let us know in the comments section below. In the end, Andrea Bocelli's journey is more than a story of a powerful voice. It is a story of courage, love, heartbreak, and the strength to overcome life's greatest challenges. From childhood struggles and personal losses to worldwide fame and criticism, Bocelli continued to inspire millions with his music and resilience. His life proves that true greatness is not only found in success, but in the ability to turn pain into purpose. If you enjoyed this emotional journey into the life of Andrea Bocelli, like, subscribe, and join us for more inspiring stories behind remarkable people around the world.